Lesson 50, Cleaning Recorded Code. In this lesson, we're going to wrap up what you need to do to take a macro that you recorded and how you're going to change it to make it into a very efficient, professional looking macro. 4 steps that you're going to go through. First one, you rarely need to dot select. You almost always find pairs of lines where Excel first selects something and then does something to the selection. So dot select through selection dot, we can get rid of that. We're going to replace hard-coded cell addresses with variables using final row. We're going to copy and paste in a single statement, and then wherever possible try and use with end with to speed up operation of the macro. Let's get started. So I have a data set here. This is the invoice file, and a macro that goes through, imports this invoice file, adds a total row, does some formatting. We're going to take a look at that recorded macro and see if there's a way to just dramatically shorten it and streamline it. So I'll call this import invoice recorded, and we'll make a copy of it just so we can see how it compares. Import invoice fixed. Okay, well the first line, the workbooks.openText, that's fine. Here, the selection.end, Excel down, select, this is where we're finding the last row. And I'm going to, instead of hard coding everything into row 14, as you can see throughout here, I'm going to set up a variable called total row. Total row is equal to cells, rows.count, comma 1.end, Excel up dot row plus 1. And anytime that we have reference to A14 or anything in row 14, we're going to replace it with the total row. Okay, so let's talk about the select and the resulting next line that does the selection. So usually here, first they selected A14 and then in the selection wrote the word total. Definitely not necessary at all. So I take everything from right after the first dot through the second dot, select it, and press delete. So we say range A14 formula R1C1 equals total. Okay, well a couple of things here. First of all, we're not going to hard code A14. We're going to use the cells command instead. Cells this, or total row, comma 1. So instead of hard coding the range, we refer to it using a variable. And we really don't even need to have dot formula R1C1 since this is just a value. We can certainly simplify that. Okay, next we go to range E14. I want to make sure to make that into a variable as well. So cells total row comma 5, because 5 is column E. All right, and now we have the dot select and then selection dot on the 2 lines. So we don't need that. So again, everything after that first dot right here through the second dot, select that and just press delete. And we get 1 line of code now. So we build the formula there in column E. Next, they're doing a selection dot copy. And then they are copying that to cells F14 to G14 and doing a paste. Well, that's 3 lines of code that we can shorten down to 1 line of code. So we'll take the selection and actually put in cells total row comma 5. We'll do a copy and then destination right in the same line. We're going to do destination cells total row comma 6. And I want that to be 2 columns wide, so I do dot resize 1 comma 2. And that eliminates the need for the paste, and also we can take out the cut copy mode. That gets rid of the marching ants. You'll see that Excel does that a lot. All right, then we come up here to rows 1:1 dot select. Does the font bold equal true? Font size equal 12? Well, in this case, we are doing a lot, well, at least 2 things with the font in row 1. And so we can shorten this by doing with rows 1:1 dot font, and then we no longer have to repeat everything up through the font. We just start it with the period at the beginning of bold, and with. All right, we're not just doing that to save on typing or save on characters. By referring to rows 1:1 dot font once, Excel sets up, basically an area in memory that points to that object, and then we can change those properties, bold and size, very quickly. Rows 14 to 14. Okay, well, that's already a problem because that's hard-coded. So we're going to say cells total row, comma 1 dot entire row. All right, and again here we have a dot select and then a selection dot font dot bold equals true, so I can get rid of everything from the dot select up until that dot. So I press delete, and then it looks like we do a columns dot auto fit. So again, the dot select and the selection dot, we'll get rid of those, and we end up with much shorter code. Okay, so given that this large line here, workbooks.opentext, is kind of a huge section of code that we didn't touch, let's take a look at the lines we did touch. We have 11 lines of code here compared to, in the original macro, 16 lines of code. So you're able to cut almost a third of lines of code out. This is a quick macro, but it does add up. It will run faster by not having to select all of the various cells all the time. There we're actually one shorter. So most of the time you're never going to see a dot select in our code. It's just not necessary. We can operate directly on the cell without selecting it. Of course, in the Excel interface, we have to select the cell before we can turn it bold or change the font size. But here in VBA, not necessary. So the macro recorder is filled with dot selects and then does selection dot. You can just get rid of the dot select in the selection. Also, go through and look for where we're changing multiple properties in the same item. Add the word with, and then you just start the next lines with the dot, and it applies to rows 1-to-1 font. Look for where the macro recorder did a copy and then a selection and a paste, and you can convert that down to one line of code using the destination keyword. And then finally, as I've talked about many times, using the end XL up from the last row to figure out where our total row or our final row is going to be, and use those variables instead of where the macro recorder hard-coded which row we're going to go to all the time. Well, there you have it. If you go through those 4 simple steps, you can turn on the macro recorder, record some code, and very quickly go in and make the macro look like it was professionally written, run faster, run more efficiently, and you should be good to go. Well, that's it. I hope that you found this DVD helpful. Using the skills that you have now, you should be able to, next time you find some very mundane task, reach over into the Visual Basic Editor and knock out a few lines of code to make life much, much simpler. So just a quick note of where you should go from here. My website, mrexcel.com, over on the left-hand side of the navigation, you'll see the message board. If you ever have questions or issues as you're trying to learn Excel, come here to the message board. You'll register once. It's free to register, and then post your questions in the Excel questions section. In Excel questions, you'll post a new thread. In the title, say, I'm trying to do this in VBA, and post the code that you have. If you are polite about it, this community of people will help you out. They'll be happy to point out better ways to do certain things. My tip here is don't come out and say, hey, I want you to write this macro for me. I mean, make an effort at coming up with a macro. Describe to them where you're running into problems, and they will give you the code. They love to see people learn about VBA, and you'll find this is a great resource, absolutely free. There's people here 24/7. They're all volunteers, so be patient, but usually within 10 or 15 minutes you'll have someone who can help you out and give you pointers to help improve your code. In fact, just coming here and looking for VBA questions is a great way to see things that other people are doing and get other code snippets. You can probably search and find many code examples here to help with whatever you need to do. If you're looking for additional resources, I want to point out my book, VBA and Macros for Microsoft Excel. There's a version for both 2003 and 2007 that's published by Q. You'll find that the book goes into more detail and a few more topics than we were able to cover in this DVD. So I point you to both of those resources. The Mr. Excel message board is free, and they certainly will help you out of coding situations. Hey, I need to figure out how to make this work, and people will volunteer with their code. Again, thanks for watching this series. I sincerely appreciate it.
Looking to advance your career by acquiring new skills? Tired of expensive off-site training programs? Wish you could learn from the best instructors in the industry? Look no further than Live Lessons. Self-paced, personal video instruction by the world's leading technology publishers. Each live lesson comes with a DVD featuring 3 to 4 hours of instructor-led classroom training, sample program code that allows you to work along with your personal instructor, and an example-rich study guide. Live lessons allow you to watch the entire course from start to finish, or navigate directly to any of the individual lessons. You'll literally watch over the shoulder of your instructor as he shows you how to build state-of-the-art applications. Live Lessons, the power of the world's leading technology experts at your fingertips. To learn more, visit mylivelessons.com today.